40th anniversary of Gem. Give me a round of applause for our two special guests, Carla Reiss, the designer of Gem from the 80s at Hasbro, and Samantha Newark, the voice of Gem and Angelica from the Sambo animated series. So I'm gonna get this started by asking a couple questions, and then I will pass the mic on to you guys, or pass the questions on to you guys, because I know you probably have a lot of questions for these ladies. So I want to know a little bit about the inspiration of Gem. First, Carla, where did the idea of Gem come from, and how did you get involved with Gem first? Yep.
Just to make things clear, I have nothing to do with the design of the actual doll. I was the design director for all her fashions, her fashion assortments. Gem was already started by Hasbro when I came into what was known as the plush group, meaning soft toy group. So I think it was really Hasbro's way of going up against Barbie. And I think they learned the hard way, sadly, that, and she was more articulated than Barbie at the time. And in hindsight, Gem is really what brought the revival of Barbie back. So I'm sure Mattel was very pleased with our efforts.
Thank you very much. And Samantha, can you give us a little bit info on how the Sambo animated series got its start, and how you got involved as the voice of Gem and Angelica, please?
Firstly, thanks everybody for coming, and I have a bunch of those fashions at my table. You're gonna have to come look at them. We brought the vintage ones. Yeah, they're fabulous. They're really cool. So how did Gem get its start? Well, that was Christy Marks and Hasbro, and Christy Marks also wrote for G.I. Joe. And I love that because apparently Hasbro didn't want to lose the boys when they did Gem, even though it was very girl-oriented. But there were car chases and all kinds of shenanigans and craziness that the boys loved too. She's such an amazing writer, and so she didn't even see apparently what the dolls looked like, and she was asking for months and months and months because she had to write the entire show, create the Gem Bible without having any visual, which just sort of is a testament to her brilliance and her creativity with the show. So, and then I entered the picture having an agent in Los Angeles, and one day I got a call from my agent. I got a voice message, Sam, you've got an audition for an animated series. And I was like, to be a cartoon, it was like, wow. And I went to Wally Burr Studios, which was a very famous place. Wally Burr, incredible director, directed so much incredible animation that you guys all grew up with. And it was at his little studio on Hollywood Way, and I went in, and I was one of hundreds and hundreds of voice actors and people that were in and out of those doors all day. And I think the thing that struck me the most was seeing the Xerox copies of all the characters pinned on the walls in there, and looking at the fashion, and my 18-year-old self that loved to go cruising on the Sunset Strip at the time, but I was too young to get into the bars. But I would watch all the kids, the 21-year-olds and the hair metal kids and on the Sunset Strip. And when I saw those pictures, I was like, oh my God, that's what's happening right now. And I was so excited. This is so current and happening. So that was the beginning of my journey, and then I got a call from my agent, you're Gem, Jericho. So.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll pass it to these guys. What inspired you about Gem? I'm going to start with Carla first.
Well, I think what really inspired me the most was her dual persona. The fact that She was a businesswoman, which, you know, in the 80s, for a lot of us young working women, that was an inspiration, but she also had the fun and the excitement of being the rock star.
Great, that's wonderful. And you, Samantha?
Well, being a singer since I was a kid, I literally felt like I was living out my rock star fantasies playing Jen, because she was on the global stage, and you know, and I loved how they had like Stevie Wonder but with a different name, and like Tina Turner was like Nina Lerner, and so she was like on stage with all these amazing people. But I think honestly, I love the archetype of Jen. And I used to, when I would go in for sessions, sometimes the cast, they were a lot older than me, and they'd be like, here comes little Pollyanna, you know. And at the time I was like, this is not okay, you know. But, you know, jump ahead, as an adult now, I think that archetype is so beautiful because she can walk into complete chaos and somehow manages to enroll people in getting along and the bigger picture. So she's that person, and it's beautiful. She taught us to like be a good friend and do the right thing, because that makes you a superstar. And you know, all of those qualities that we learn in kindergarten, and I just love that it was such a huge part of the show, was this moral compass that it had that teaches you to be a good person. And you see the misfits being insane and committing felonies every episode. And then somehow it all works out and Jen throws a benefit concert, so yeah.
That was wonderful, thank you very much. So I'm gonna throw it to you guys. I'm gonna pick everybody by raising your hand, and then you're gonna stand up and ask a question, because I cannot get the microphone out there. So if you have a question for the panelists, please raise your hand. Anybody? Got a question? You're first.
Okay.
Stand up.
I'll jump on the hand grenade for the first time.
Sing out, Louise.
Yeah. So I was one of those. I never saw Jim as a girl or a boy cartoon. It was in my regular rotation watching. And side note, it is one of only 2 cartoons that ever made me almost cry as a child. This is Farewell but Not Goodbye. Yeah, that one did it. But I'm just curious, in this days of reboots, restarts, rewrites, do you think the world is ready for Jim's second act?
Jen 2.0?
Yes. Jimmer.
You know, there was a certain magic that these original shows had, and I know that the people in the inner workings of it have talked publicly about it wasn't focus grouped to death. They basically were given their creative roles and allowed to do what they do brilliantly. And so everybody kind of got to play. And I think that's where the magic happens. We can't bottle it, we don't know exactly, but there's an ingredient in there that I think is organic and just took off because everybody was allowed to be their genuine creative selves. And so if they were to do a reboot of a cartoon, I mean, personally, I would love Christy Marks to be involved and some of the original creatives to be involved in it. And it would have to have the same sort of heart. And, you know, it's like everything is so micromanaged and disposable today. And then you don't even get time to kind of lean into something. Kids don't have they watch it for 10 seconds. Oh, I'm not feeling it. And then on to the next thing, because there's just saturation of so much stuff. Yeah. So I don't know how it would work. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm usually the last to hear about everything. So Hasbro keeps everything really close to the chest. But yeah, I mean, I'm open, but it would be hard to recreate the magic. Yeah.
What about you, Carla?
Well, I'd certainly love to be involved in something like that. I don't know. I really think it was a child of the 80s. I have to agree with what Samantha has to say. I don't think kids are given the time for creativity anymore. I think they're so programmed into one activity after another and one image after another that they're looking at. I don't know if it would work the same way, but then again, you see licenses out there that have lasted for years and years. And, you know, I wish I had an answer for that. I'm just afraid I don't, you know.
Well, I have a little bit of information. Loyal Subjects is now doing a whole new line of gem. They brought that back, and I think with the inspiration of gem in the G.I. Joe Classified line, with the Colt Slither homages in there and stuff like that, that the audience is probably ready for a gem revival. What do you guys think? Think we should have a gem revival? Who is next? Who's got a question? You.
I'd like to
Stand up.
piggyback on this question. Hi. Let's kind of piggyback on this question. What was your opinion of the live-action movie that was made versus the storyline from the cartoon, which we all love?
Right. Well, I mean, initially when John Chu asked me to be involved in it, I was floored because the fans have been asking for something like that for so many years. And then when I finally found out it was happening, I was so excited for everybody. And then I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So when the trailer came out and it didn't show much of anything that was familiar to the original fans, then the train started to go off the cliff, like in a Gem episode. And when William Shatner's tweeting out, like, what, no synergy, no Gemstar earrings? I mean, it got crazy on Twitter. And when people are saying no Misfits, I was like, I toured the Misfits set, you know, and I sat and had lunch with John Chu, and I said, there are Misfits in this. He's like, you can't have Gem without the Misfits. So I knew all these things, and I wasn't able to say anything. And I know that he had some pretty grandiose, wonderful ideas for what he wanted to do, but obviously, you know, Blumhouse and their marketing thing, he could only do what he could do, but he had hopes of doing more if the brand sort of was revised. But it's so hard to do that. It was changed a lot. Even though there were Easter eggs in there for the original fans, lots of Easter eggs, but I think it was entirely too different and the trailer didn't help. But the girls were amazing, and the day I was there, I got to like watch Juliette Lewis work, and I was just like, and one other thing real quick, when I first drove up to the set, they had the trailers for the actors, but it didn't say like Aubrey Peoples, Haley Kiyoko, it said Jerrica, Aja, Shayna, Kimber. And I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I walked back in time. It was wild, it was really fun, so, yeah.
Thank you. Next, Chris.
My question is for Ms. Reiss. I recently heard that you worked on the Dusty figure, original Dusty figure, and you did the cloth on the back of his helmet. And I know they didn't really do much cloth or soft goods after that until really the 90s, but I was curious, did like you or someone in your department like set in on the design meetings as, you know, answer questions of like the other designers wanting to do soft goods, or to put in like, hey, this is a good place to put in a sash or, you know, something?
It really was much more simple than that. One of the design group from the Boys Toys came down to my cubicle, and we looked through the fabric cabinet and said, okay, it's going to be this. After much debate, I might add, but no, I wasn't in any of the Joe meetings. Probably because my husband, who's somewhere in this audience, was the senior director of Boys Toys at the time, and, you know, the little nepotism issue, you know, it was hard enough being husband and wife in the same department without being in the meetings together. So no, it was very simple.
Somebody back there.
Hello. Use English for that. So I'm just sitting here. I'm not gonna be a fanboy, but I'm gonna ask one question. Let's just hear it for everybody. You know, Showtime synergy. One time.
It's Showtime synergy. It's a good thing I haven't been smoking for 40 years, or I sound like that. that. People were always like, "You still sound the same." So.
I have a question for Carla. Hold on just a moment. I have a question for Carla. How did you land on the design aesthetic for the clothing? Because, like Samantha said, it was of the now, of the like Madonna, of that period of time in girls' culture, I guess you can call it. But how did Hasbro go through those steps to get to that? And why were they so like good at being on that pulse? How did they get to that?
Well, first of all, I should explain that at Hasbro they had the girls' toy group, which dealt with the plastic of girls' products, and then in the plush group were the soft goods. So the dolls themselves and their costumes fell under the girls' group. The fashion assortments fell into my group. So what we would do as fabric designers, whatever came on a doll, the girls group would send us an image of it and we would create it in 3 dimension for them. As for the fashion assortments, it was up to us to come up with the designs. And you know, it would start with looking at a lot of fashion magazines and watching MTV and a lot of imagination too. So it was sort of a combination, and then we would take the selected designs, they would go to an illustrator, and then they'd be presented to management, and they'd say what they liked, what they didn't like, and then we would go to 3D. So, you know, credit where credit's due. The girls group is really responsible for what came with the doll. So, you know, we were very involved with it, but that didn't fall in our category.
Well, thank you, anyways. Appreciate that. All right, you got a question?
Your favorite episode or storyline?
Oh my gosh, so my favorite episodes, I just love the talent of, like, you know, the ones that pizzazz, Patricia, Albrecht. They're hilarious. You know, they're episodes that I love just because they're so funny to watch the other actors and what they did. I loved Out of the Past. I think that's probably my favorite because I love how this cartoon was not afraid to delve into, you know, the cartoon opens with a funeral.
Yeah, seriously, a lot of
what's happening? Yeah, and so Out of the Past delves into the death of Jerica and Kimber's mom in a plane crash, and that Jerica had been in a fight with her, and then she died, and she never got to resolve that. And I mean, it was so poignant. The writing was like so deep, and they didn't talk down to kids. And I got to play like 10-year-old Jerica, which I got to kind of stretch my wings a little as a voice artist. And yeah, so it's a beautifully written episode, and a lot of fans have told me that one makes me cry. A lot of episodes, it's like you have the wackiness and all the fun campiness of the 80s cartoon that you're expecting, but then you've got like this poignant, heavy subject matter that really talked to kids going through stuff, and it's just so well done. I think that's why we're still here 40 years later, you know?
That's the perfect end to what I was just thinking is I've spoken to a lot of the writers at Sunbow that wrote on all 3 Gem, Transformers, and G.I. Joe, Buzz Dixon, Michael Charles Hill, Flynn Dilley, and they all wrote on Gem as well. And they did not write down to their audience, they wrote up to their audience. The mature themes made us be better people, and that's 100% why it still resonates 40 years later, like you said. And we're here talking about it 40 years later in this panel. So thank you, both of you. Anybody else have a question?
For Carla, I was wondering, did you like the Gem fashions more, or the Misfits? Was there one group that you thought was more fun to do, or?
Well, I hate to admit it, but the Misfits were a lot more fun to do. You know, I think for anybody, it's easier to do hard edge than it is to do pretty and soft and popular and what have you. And I think the first outfit I designed was for the Misfits, as I recall anyway, yeah.
Well, I have a question for Samantha. There has been this thing with kind of like not parallel, but dual identities that has kind of saturated children's entertainment, comic books, what have you. Superman and Clark Kent, Prince Adam and He-Man, Jim and Angelica, and stuff like that. Trying to do those dual parts, what did you bring differently to each role to make them unique and stand out as different characters, even though they're the same person? Because that's got to be difficult.
Well, I really thank Wally Burr a lot for his brilliance in that regard. I mean, obviously, you're suspending your disbelief. She is the same person. Just different outfits and different hair. But I think the writing really spoke to, like, Jerica was, she's managing Starlight House, and she's, behind the scenes trying to take care of everything for Jen, and then Jen just kind of comes on stage with all this, I'm Jen, and these are the holograms. And so the writing really helped with that. He didn't want me to change my voice. He wanted, so I didn't. So there were tweaks here and there, and it was just kind of up to the kids to suspend their disbelief that they were different, but so.
I always felt Angelica had a lighter voice, a quieter voice, whereas Jem was much more boisterous and like, hey, we've got to go do this, we've got to stop this, we've got to resolve this. Where she was like more like reserved, like business, like, yeah, we have these things to do, this is happening, we need your help.
I think she was a lot more stressed out. I mean, she's keeping so many secrets. So I think she was just like stressed and, Rio, I can't talk to you about that right now. And then Jem just got to like be Jem. Oh, we'll throw a benefit concert. We're happy to do it. We'll help you save the ski resort. Hold on.
Thank you. Pat, you have a question?
This one's for Carla. The instruments that came with the figures, that was done by the girls group then, or?
They did the instruments that came with the dolls. Actually, I did the ones that came in the fashion assortment.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
whenever they would do the ones that came with the dolls, were you designing the costumes with those instruments in mind, or were they added afterward?
I think the fashion assortment came well afterwards. So
Okay.
the goal was really to make them look like they were associated but not the same. Different but the same, if you will. Yeah.
Cool.
Question back there?
A couple of years ago, Samantha, you did a little voice thing for my daughters, and I started playing Jem for them. I don't know, they're 5 years old or something like that, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. I still have that video, but they were really enamored, like she's the actual voice, and it took them a second to figure out that you're not a cartoon. You're different. But speaking of that, though, you're talking about your voice. You kind of touched on my question, but did you, sort of two questions, did you have to change your voice at all to do her, or is it your natural voice? And then the other question was, Rita, is that her name, who sings? Did you sing anything, or do anything with the actual music and stuff like that?
So yeah, thank you for your question. And your kids are, we say, #next generation. Because the little ones are finding it, and it's the sweetest thing ever. So I didn't have to, Wally Burr, when we all got cast, he said, we want the kids to look up to you like they're your older sisters. And so we don't want it cartoony, and although there are more of those elements in there, they wanted us to sound real and relatable, like your friends. So that was that. And then as far as the singing went, when I auditioned, I thought that's why I got the audition, because I've sung my whole life. And then they told us that it was cast in New York and that they were matching the speaking voices to the singing voices. And the only time I got to sing in an episode was where there was like a fake gem. You guys will probably remember the episode better. And I had to, Wally was like, can you sing like you can't sing? And I was like, what? And he's like, you have to sing as if you can't sing. And it was something like, tell me I'm crazy, maybe I know, but I believe in happy endings. It was like something like that. It's like,
Sounds like the way I sing.
But yeah, the beautiful singing was done by Britta Phillips, and the first time I ever watched an episode of Gem, when I got up in the morning and I watched it and I saw it with the animation and the theme song, and it still gives me chills to this day. I think it's one of the best theme songs ever, and it's so exciting and awesome. So hats off to Britta. I've done that kind of session work before where you have to belt your chest voice into infinity, and like, good on you, girl. It's not easy, you know. So
that kind of brings up another question that I have for both of you. The Gem brand has been around now for 40 years, and you, outside of this sort of thing here, or conventions that you have for GemCon and so on, have you had any interactions with people outside of the, I guess, for lack of a better term, real world, where they knew you or found out that you were involved with Gem, and that they were like touched by the work that you've done? We'll start with Carla, we'll go to Samantha.
Well, actually, the only person that really located me was a gentleman by the name of Brian Shepard. I don't know, maybe you know Brian? Okay. I don't know if he's here. No, okay. Gee, it must have been, I don't know, I'm gonna say 6-7 years ago, maybe a little longer. He was in touch with me, and I was shocked that he knew pretty much everybody that had been in the design group that I was in charge of. And sadly, he informed me of one of the girls I worked with had passed on and so forth. And you know, it was very flattering that he found all of us, and it meant that much to him, you know. And I do hear from him once in a blue moon, and he had loads of questions, and it was interesting for me because he assumed that I knew everything about the show, and you know, not at all. And that was a completely different entity from those of us at Hasbro. And you know, we saw snippets of it, and until it was aired, we really didn't know anything that was going on. And I would get questions like, what was your inspiration for outfit such and such in episode this and that? And, you know, I couldn't help him at all. But you know, it was very nice, and he did get me connected, and I did a GemCon during COVID, so I did it virtually. So I don't know if anybody saw that. You did. Well, thank you. And that was fun. But it does my heart good because Gem was the touchstone to the rest of my career. So she means a lot to me. Maybe not so much as a product, but you know, more that what it meant to me in my life's journey. And I'm so pleased so many of you care about her the way I would, you know.
Thank you very much. Samantha, I know you've been touched many times, probably.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wanted to see if my friend, my project manager, Brandy, would come up and tell her little Gem story of how it's, yeah, you gotta hear it from her. It's come on up, Brandy. This is like not, she didn't meet me in a show. This is Brandy, you guys.
Okay. Hi, I'm Brandy. Okay, so I'm 49. I grew up on Gem. I watched it every weekend. And so when I was about to turn 30, so this would be 20 years ago, I had a journal, and I journal a lot, but I never go back and I read it, you know. I just put it out there and then leave it. And what was it, maybe 3 months ago, I happened to have this journal, and I was flipping and I was rereading some of my stuff. And I had written a bucket list for my 30th birthday. Like, it started out as things I want for when I turn 30, and then it was just like, okay, possible or impossible things that I would just like. Jump out of an airplane, you know, have a drum circle, whatever. And number 4 on the list was meet and have lunch with Jem. And how I thought I could have lunch with a cartoon character. So obviously this fell in the impossible category, right? And then in October of last year, I randomly met Samantha. And after knowing me, like, we became fast friends, just really fast friends. We were right on the same wavelength. And I think it was, what, a month or 2?
Yeah.
Something like that, before she finally revealed who she was.
I was mailing merch at, at UPS, and the girl, they all know me in there. They were like, is this another Jem doll that you're shipping? And she's like, wait, what?
Jem doll? As in Jem and the Holograms, Jem Jerica, I have a secret, oh Rio?
I was keeping a secret from Brandy, you know, outside, because
I flipped out. I think I screamed in the parking lot.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
And then I went back home, I threw on Tubi, and sure enough, Samantha Newark. I was like, I'm getting chills just thinking about that. So,
was
thanks
super
for
fun.
letting me share.
Thanks, Brandy.
The best part is, now I get to work with her.
And we have lunch all the time.
So I know you've been touched by many a fan over the decades. Are there any that really stick out where you can say that person made me cry, or this, or a charity, or something, or you went to a hospital, or whatever?
Oh my gosh, there have been innumerable people that have touched me. You know, I think they come up to the table and they kind of melt into their 8-year-old selves, and suddenly they're vulnerable, and and I see when the light bulb goes on. I didn't realize what was happening initially, because people will burst into tears, and it's like when I start talking to them, I think it's all connecting, you know, the synapses of, like, because I sound like their childhood, and it's all just kind of, and it's so beautiful. I did have an experience once that was, I went to a cigar lounge for an anniversary dinner or something in Nashville, and there was a wedding party going on, a wedding reception, and we were in another area. Somebody said, I don't know who broke the anonymity, but somebody said something, and suddenly this bride comes running into the cigar lounge in her bridal dress, and she's like, oh my God, I love Jem, and it's my wedding, and you have to sign my dress. And I was like, I was like, no, honey, I can't, let's take a picture. She insisted that I sign her dress, so after going back and forth for a little while, we picked up the hem of her dress, the underneath, and I autographed her dress for her, and that was just a random, I don't even know how she found out, but then she was so excited and flew away in her beautiful wedding dress to the other room and had her event, and I was like, what just happened? That was so crazy. So yeah, but I mean, so many wonderful. You guys are amazing, you know. I didn't get to meet you when you were little watching the show, and I wish that I could have, because I love the little kidlets, but to get to meet your kids now and meet the grown-up 80s kids, it's just, who'd have thought, you know, it's humbling and really special.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful series that touched me. I'm a G.I. Joe guy, but that's a weird thing that I'm saying right there, that I'm a G.I. Joe guy, but I love Jem. Do you find that unique as a fan base, that we can be fans of G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Jem? And have you had any experiences where people come up to you and you like wondered, well, how did this person become a gem fan? Why is this type of person a gem fan? Because there's all types of people in the world, but a lot of us love gem. So have you either of you had any experiences where you've seen that and wondered why that was?
All the time. I mean, just in the last few years, the demographic has completely changed. Like, we'll have 5-year-olds in full gem cosplaying. Like, I'm watching it on Tubi or Netflix, and I love it. And it's like, did your mom show you? No, I just found it. So there's that, and then there's the 16-year-old, and then there's the 25-year-old. And sometimes, you know, I'm shocked. It's you know, gone generationally like that, and people are still finding it because it's always been on TV, on some channel somewhere over the years. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I can't remember what your initial question was. Yeah.
So yeah, because I'm not your typical Barbie Joe gem type of person, but I do think it spoke to me as I would say teenager. I was probably about 12, but.
Right.
But it did speak to me at that age. You know, they had the PSAs and things like that. Do good, don't do this, don't do that, whatever. And you guys had the same things on yours.
Yeah, you know what also I think is a huge impact to, you know, boys and girls and everybody, that you kind of had to be invested in your Saturday morning cartoons. There was no like, well, I'll just stream it later, or I'll watch it on my phone later. Like, we didn't have that. You know, if you wanted to watch your cartoons, you had to like be invested and be there, and so then you were kind of held hostage to whatever the shows were in the middle of the ones that you wanted, or whoever had the one remote control for the television, you know. You watch G.I. Joe, so I get to watch Jam. So I think that had a lot to do with it, and I can only imagine. It's so bizarre, right? It's like where you guys all were at in the world, you know. Watching TV with this amazing animation and designs and our voices and beaming out to you.
And it captured all of us, so it did something right, obviously. Any other questions? Yes?
So when you were making the show, did you have any like fun behind the scenes stories, like bloopers or anything like that?
I'm sure there are blooper reels that I would love to get my hands on, because my 18-year-old self, I remember Patricia, the voice of Pizzazz, and Charlie Adler, who was Tech Rat, and Eric Raymond, and we all did kind of extraneous people. But when Patricia would flub a line, she was known for her expletives that would just pour out of her mouth. And it was pretty shocking, because I remember, and Charlie and her would get into it, you know, and just play off of each other and be ridiculous and funny until we'd all get in trouble, you know, for laughing, and Wally'd have to be like, okay, I gotta work here. But I've told this story, like I was shocked. I was like, you can do that at work? Like, I couldn't believe it. Like the freedom, you know, everybody got to play. It was like live theater. And so yeah, the behind the scenes things would be priceless if we could. It's the best part. It's the best part is what happens when the mics are not on, but they are on, but they're supposed to be. Yeah.
Anybody else got a question? Go ahead.
This one might be a little out of your wheelhouse, but we mentioned Barbie and the Rockers earlier, and there's kind of an urban legend about Mattel finding out about Jim. And so they've rushed Barbie and the Rockers so that they could get on shelves before Jim. It came out, they got theirs out like a couple of months earlier. And there's always rumors that maybe there was like some insider trading or somebody leaking secrets. Was that ever something you all heard?
Well, actually in Asia, where these things were manufactured at that time, within one factory, there might be an assembly line. Say for Mattel, and Hasbro is right next, and they're sending their representatives over to make sure things are done a certain way and so forth. So, you know, they see these things going on over And, the companies try little tricks to throw them off the track. Like, for instance, with the glitter and gold assortment for Gem, we all had to label it as ruby red because we didn't want Mattel to know that we were going with this golden look. And, I don't have any of the drawings or anything anymore, but all our stuff was labeled ruby red. And that was just one little thing. I don't know if it ever helped or not, but those are the kind of things that happen. But these things are easily seen when usually marketing people go over to Asia and check on what's going on, and they find out. It's really more that than, like you say, insider trading or something along those lines.
That's an interesting point that you bring up. I'm curious if people, other designers, other creators at Hasbro got wind of Gem and they want to know what was going on down there. And were they excited? Were they like trying to take things and add it to maybe G.I. Joe or Transformers? Because down the road, Transformers, they added RC, and then G.I. Joe had a whole bunch of females. Were they like sneaking peeks at Gem and maybe trying to get some ideas? Or
I don't know if I can really answer that, but at the next panel, when the G.I. Joe folks will be on, that's a good question for my husband.
Okay.
Steve Reiss. I'm gonna pass the buck over to him.
All right, then I'll ask him then.
I really, I don't really know about any cross-pollination between product lines so much, except, there might have been cases where, just an example, something worked for My Little Pony. So it's like, hey, this particular decoration really worked for My Little Pony. Let's put it on Gem, or let's try it on another product line.
Cool, thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question, Samantha. Did you guys get folks from G.I. Joe, Transformers, and I think there was several other Marvel cartoons that were being produced by Sambo at the time? Did any creators come to the Gem recordings and get involved in that to see what you guys are doing?
I don't really remember a lot of people joining the sessions. Sometimes I would see people behind the glass in the engineering room in the back where Wally was. And we weren't necessarily introduced, or maybe we were introduced and I just don't even remember who they were. Probably the writers would come, but not specifically. Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, I think you did a voice on Transformers prior to Gem, didn't you?
No, it was during the run of Gem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was during the run of Gem. I think it was 1986. So it's like right in the middle of when Gem was on the air. Yeah, so a lot of us kind of jumped ship to work on Transformers. Sue Blue, the voice of Stormer, and Lindsay Pierce is RC in Transformers and has gone on to direct Transformers, and she's amazing. Also, Jack Angel from Transformers was played by Dad, played Emmett Benton. And he was married to my agent, so I would always see him when I would go on auditions, because you used to go to your agent to go and be put on tape for auditions. And I would always see him and be like, my daughter, come here, my daughter. He was always so sweet. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody out there have another question? Yes, way back there.
It's me, Dan. I just want to say, first of all, not only the music and the animation and the voices of Gem, but the fashion for me was really key to getting my attention and keeping it along with the characters. So I just would be curious to hear about your inspiration for coming up with these fabulous designs that took the life of 80s fashion to a whole nother level.
We kind of asked that question earlier, but maybe you can elaborate.
It's very much just keeping in tune with what was going on with fashion magazines, MTV, movies that were going on, that kind of thing. And then also, this is kind of diverging here, but a lot had to do with what fabrics were available to us. And the problem was Mattel, at one time, I don't know if they hold this record now, you know, don't hold me to it, but at one time Mattel was the largest manufacturer of apparel in the world. And that was because of Barbie. So they had a tremendous buying power for new fabric technologies. And that's something Hasbro didn't have. So when a representative from Hasbro would go to Asia, and particularly Japan, where a lot of fabric technology really started, they would come back with what Mattel had used the year before, because they were going to divulge what they were doing for Mattel. And so we were always like a whole year cycle behind Barbie with the fashion, the fabrics that we would put in our fashions. And yet I have to say that even though it was a year behind, you know, we would have a fabric storage area where you could go in, and it was like a candy store essentially. And some of the combinations we would come up with was strictly because they were there for our use. And it wouldn't have been as smooth an operation for us if it was like, okay, I want this to look like something, okay, Madonna wore, let's say, but where do I find the fabric? You know, we had that at our disposal at all times. And I will say on a personal note, I spent so much time thinking of minute textures and all that would work on a fashion doll that I couldn't even shop for myself. I mean, I'd be in the department store, yeah, I could tear this apart, or, you know, let me get a piece of this, you know, and it was very much, particularly for her hosiery, you know, you want something that looks like a textured stocking or a fishnet or whatever, and where do you buy that for someone that's so big, you know, and you become obsessed with finding exactly what you need, and that became part of it as well. That's the best I can say.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Well, Ms. Carla,
Yeah.
how often after we create a design would the department head either approve or deny?
Well, we had different levels of presentations. We'd have what were called internal, where it was strictly the research and development group that would evaluate. Then we would go to marketing, and, you know, marketing really rules. And once marketing had their feedback and so forth, then it would go to upper management, and that would be a time when Stephen Hassenfeld, who owned the company, and the VPs and everybody would be there, and they would give their feedback. So it wasn't until upper management fully signed off on what they wanted. So,
Yes, Michael.
When the design the clothes, did you design them directly to the doll scale, or did you work on some larger scale and then scale them down?
strictly to the doll.
Yes.
Strictly to the doll.
For the fashions, did you come up with the names of the fashions, or were they given to you? Because a lot of times that became like the names of the songs, or were really key to the cartoon.
That was marketing did all that. In fact, you know, when people would be in touch with me, they would give me the name of the outfit, and there'd be more like a number in my head for what it was, and I'd have to look at the back of the package to actually know the name of it. Some of them I do know, but no, that was marketing. Yeah.
Sir. Kind of a thank you and a confession. Confession being that I was closeted as a child, scared to be exposed to anything. And so the marketing of Jem was on point. Putting it smack dab in between those two cartoons that I was watching regularly, And then I had, like I said, no excuse. And I loved it. And I couldn't admit it as a child because, you know, you told your friends, you're like, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I loved it. I loved looking at the outfits. I wanted to see, no offense, I wanted to see what Pizzazz will be wearing next week. Pizzazz was my girl. I love you, Samantha, you know that. I love you. Pizzazz was my favorite. And also, one thing about the marketing, I know you guys weren't involved in the marketing, but I remember vaguely just a commercial that would pop on like months before the show came out, where it was just coming soon, Jem, that was it. Do you know anything about that? What was going on behind the scenes? What was their intention with that?
I think it was what they would have called a sizzle, you know, to put it out there and get attention. But, you know, we weren't really privy to their plans for all that. I can tell you the Toy Fair when Jem was introduced and it was on the big sign in Times Square, it was a rush, you know, to look up there and say, gee, this is big enough that something we did is in Times Square, you know, and I never thought anything like that would happen. I think no matter how big or small anybody's job was, if they worked on it, that meant a lot, you know, but really what means more is all of your love for it. It makes those of us who did the work realize that we spent our time well.
You really helped a young positive kid.
I'm glad we could help. Yes.
So we're getting close to the end of this 40th anniversary panel. I want to say to Carla, Reiss, and Samantha Newark, really appreciate you being here at JoeFest 25. Is there anything that you would like to say to the fans? Carla just pretty much said it, but if you would like to elaborate or add anything to the Jem fans for the 40th anniversary, go ahead.
Just, it's all about you guys, you know, it's all about the fans, and it always has been, and it's wonderful to have done work that actually emotionally connected. That's really meaningful as a human and as a voice actor. And stay young at heart. Yeah. Stay young at heart. I love that these shows happen because, you know, we're only here for a hot minute anyway, so enjoy the memories of your childhood, enjoy being together with your people, and stay young at heart, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
And, you know, just to reiterate, you're absolutely right. And last night over dinner, my husband and I were talking about, well, you know, when you get to be our ages, you look back and you say, did I spend my time well? And what did I do that was worthy? You know, did I change anything for anybody? And obviously this gentleman felt that we made a change. But thank you for letting us look back and see that maybe we made a little difference, because it really is about what other people see in it and what they care about. So thank all of you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting. You're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the great questions. And if you would like to see Carla, Reiss, or Samantha Newark, they will be down in the main hall at the Joe Declassified booth, and right beside the Joe Declassified booth, Samantha will be there signing autographs and helping you relive memories of your childhood. Thank you.
I just have one more request. Can we take a selfie? So, like, if you guys want to all kind of stand up, and then we can somehow capture this moment, because this is really lovely. If you want to be in the picture. Yes. So kind of all.
Everybody kind of work together here. We gotta kind of do like a
that's a mosh pit type of situation. We're gonna get in front of them.
Towards the aisle, yeah.
Come on together. Oh, there you go.
This is awesome.
No, whatever you got. We're gonna put Jim.
And then on the count of 3, we're going to say truly outrageous.
All right. 1, 2, 3. True.